Welcome back to the Corner of Story and Game, your podcast at the intersection of game design and storytelling. I'm your host, Gerald Ford, and today we're joined by Chris Tran, a career strategist, consultant, and former Riot Games executive who helped bring esports to the global stage across Southeast Asia. Chris built major events like the Mid-Seasonal Invitational and helped shape the region's presence at the Asian Games, all after transitioning into gaming from a successful career in advertising. These days, Chris is coaching job seekers in the game industry, consulting on major projects, and reconnecting with his love of Magic the Gathering. In this episode, we're diving into the games industry from outside in. So let's get into it. Chris, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, man. Braver men. Well, you are braver than many men.
Can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. Just don't beat me up too badly. All right, well, today I want to talk to you about a whole bunch of different things, including the deck you picked for your getting back into Magic. But more importantly, I want to talk to you about how you got into the game industry, what you're doing these days to help people in the game industry, all of this fun stuff. But before we get there, let's start way back at the beginning with little Chris. You've ran an ad agency. You survived a major earthquake in Nepal. Somewhere along the line, you transitioned to what you're doing now. So I want to hear the story. Tell me your origin story. How did you get into gaming? How did you get from what you were doing to what you do now?
Great question, right? And I think all of us, we have this kind of larger than life kind of seminal moment. And for me, call it 10, 11 years ago, through a lot of happy accidents and suddenly forced social situations, I found myself at the head of an advertising agency, right? And in a world where we kind of extol and celebrate consumerism and buying more things, at that point, 10, 11, 12 years ago, advertising guys were a little bit like the rock stars of the business world in a bit, because you got to like get into all the cool parties because you manage these budgets. But I hated it. I hated it with so many fibers of my body, because the whole thing about advertising is to convince people to buy things that they don't need. And you kind of like justify it to yourself, and you'd say, oh, they just don't know they need it yet. And I'm just helping them with the decision, right? And that is the kind of self-talk that, I don't know, crazy people and cult leaders like use to convince themselves to do things that they know deep down aren't the most ethical of things. And so I was at this point in my life where my success and my moral code were like wildly different directions, and I was feeling exhausted and pulled apart like a rubber band that had been pulled too many times. Or like when you do a rubber band ball and you like try to unwind it, and that rubber band in the middle has been hanging on for dear life for too long. I was that rubber band. And so I went to Nepal, as any reasonable person would do, because I once read someplace that those who travel, sometimes you have to get lost to be found, right? And so I went to Nepal, and I was going to climb a mountain, and then this was literally, call it 10 years, 7 months, a couple of days ago, right? And then one day I was just drinking coffee, and then next moment I was knocked on my ass, and then Nepal was hit by literally the biggest earthquake experience in like 100 years. And when I say biggest, I mean, unfortunately, 9,000 people died. I didn't know at the time. I was running for my life until I wasn't running for my life, and then I was just scavenging for food in not a post-apocalyptic landscape, but certainly something where everything I'd taken for granted was torn away from me. And I mean, like, not just electricity, but also food and water and my own identity, because all of my paperwork was tied up in a building that wasn't safe to go in, because there were aftershocks literally every couple hours. Every couple hours, there'd be a massive earthquake again, but it wasn't officially an earthquake. But when you are terrified and nothing is stable around you, everything is an earthquake, everything is a calamitous event. And then the trials and tribulations of selling more Coca-Cola seem really small. It seems trivial and stupid and seems a little melodramatic to like say, oh my God, my life is so terrible, I have to do these sorts of things. But then, like when you're alone with your thoughts in a way where like my day was like wake up on the street under a pile of blankets with other random strangers because that's how you stayed warm at night. Look for food, which was normally instant noodles, and Coca-Cola because for whatever reason that was the most plentiful calories to be found. And then just kind of walk because there was no place for me to sit, you know?
Right.
And I realized that this is not how I wanted like to go out. Like if I had died, remember, like if I had died, what is the story of me? And the story of me would be doing things that didn't really make me excited to be me, to tell people about me, to grow in and I was growing in ways that I didn't want to grow in. Um, and quite fundamentally, one of the real base values I think we all have is that we are not fully happy unless we're growing and learning every step of the way. It's like part of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs sort of thing. Um, and so when I left, when I finally like came out, my friends yelled at me for being an idiot, and I learned that my brother was getting ready to get on a plane to go look for my dead body and all that sort of like fun stuff. I resolved to not compromise anymore and try to do things that really made me proud to be of who I am, even if the financial rewards were not at the end of the rainbow, right? Because that pot of gold is a little bit of fool's gold. And how do we search for something that is a little bit better? And so that was what, I came back and I got rid of my agency. And I saw that Riot was hiring, and I knew that I was not the kind of guy that Riot Games would hire, but I didn't let that stop me from doing my best, right? And like I pause here because I'm not sure exactly how much to share. So when in doubt, just share everything. And I was a big time League of Legends player for a long time, even before I was like, even around the time when I was starting in advertising. But I paused because I wasn't a good League of Legends player. I was the kind of guy that would call it self-medicate with recreational beverages. I don't let's say I used to drink a lot, right? Because if I just say recreational substances and leave it hanging there, people will think dwarf. But there's nothing good about saying that you drank a lot. But I would go from a night of the bars and come home and still be frustrated and miserable with my life, and then crack open League of Legends and then be the worst League of Legends player ever. Right? So when you read about people who are just really bad and kind of not like being a good teammate, that was me. I didn't tell anyone at Riot in the interview process, but I enjoyed the game immensely, and I saw the value that it brought to me. And so, yeah, I saw the mountain and I put together a plan of attack to go after it. Um, and I just realized that that metaphor is kind of freaking on the nose after escaping Nepal, but yeah.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the inciting incident, I guess they say in the business.
Yeah. Yeah. It would definitely be. And then the crossing of the threshold and going on the hero's journey. There you go. What I want to dig into how you approached getting that job at Riot, but before we do, it just occurred to me. I mean, after going through something like that, and I mean, 99.9% of us have no idea what that would have been like. But coming out of that, what was the process where you filtered through everything that you could have done after that? Like you have this moment where you're like, okay, holy fuck, I need to the rest of my life has to matter. I have to do something that I care about. How did you filter down to Riot, like, or to games, or to what you eventually went after?
I think I filtered before I even left Nepal. I think that was just all that time was used to distill a bit of my values, right? Because there was just nothing else to me except for that. I think um, maybe I had a Kindle with me to keep me company. But being in a nation of strangers under duress didn't make for a great small talk.
Right.
Um, but leaving during that phase, there were really two kind of hypotheses that I thought I'd want to live my life. One was three. One was get the heck out of advertising, period, paragraph, full stop. right?
Mm-hmm.
The first, like, you gotta, I don't know, you gotta get rid of the toxin before you can try to get like start healing. So that was the first thought, right?
Right.
The second thought was probably the most interesting people that I'd met in the last couple of years were this couple who live in South Africa running a gifted and talented school in sub-Saharan in rural South Africa. I don't know if it's sub-Saharan or not. I'm terrible with geography. I'm an American. So like I don't know where sub-Saharan Africa is, but it was in rural South Africa, and them telling me about what they did was really inspiring and exciting to me. And I thought maybe this is something I could do, maybe not as a vocation, but as a side quest when I wanted to figure stuff out, like just do a 1 year kind of hang out and teach kids what I know, and then and I think that teaching also creates a great opportunity for people to learn at the same time. Um, but leaving Nepal, if I was going to say, oh, gaming was really my thing, honestly, I wasn't sure, right? But I left, and then it's like, I don't know if they say it, but I got it from the Mask of Zorro, where it says when the student is ready, their teacher appears. And then so I got out, and then within a week later, somebody in America, a friend of mine, reached out and said, "Hey, Riot Games is hiring a country manager of Vietnam. I know you're not a gamer, but do you know anybody who would want to apply for this?" Because when you're a gamer and you have a career, it's like a mark of shame. You're not supposed to tell people you're a gamer, or at least in my generation, and maybe your generation, that is like an invitation.
Yeah.
Get swirly in a blue toilet bowl or something like that.
I was always a big guy, so they didn't do that to me, but I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, I was yeah. I had made my peace with those guys a long time ago, so but it was uh, to me telling people I was or am a gamer was social poison, right? In business, in like relationships, etc. So I kind of hid this thing um that was really part of my life. And then so this opportunity came in. And so I told my friend, hey, look, if you're my friend, you'll delete this email you got and not tell anybody about this. And if you tell anybody about this, I don't know, maybe someday when you're not at your house, somebody might come to your house, get your dog out of the house, and then burn your house down. I don't know. Like it's just a friendly warning.
Yeah.
All right. And like all jokes aside, that was the joke. And then so I was ready for a new adventure. I'd always been a gamer. And then this thing kind of like the clouds parted, a beam of sunshine hit me in the eye, and I said, "Why the heck not?" Now I want to take a quick pause because when you said origin story in gaming, I want to take and go into the Wayback Machine, like
Yeah.
very much like Rocky and Bullwinkle and uh, who was the dog with Was Peabody the dog? Remember like the Wayback Machine with like Rocky and Bullwinkle?
I don't remember, dude. I was thinking Wayne's World, but
Oh, I I'll lean into that as well. And so I'm a child of immigrants. I was my parents landed in America, and within months I was born, which meant that I was raised in America not speaking English because my parents didn't speak English. My parents didn't speak English for a good long time, and so I went to school, and like when I first went to school, two things happened. One is because I didn't speak English, they thought I had a learning disability and put me in the special kids class. Right. And so m- back then, and I'm talking mid 70s, or mid, like late, like when I went to school, it was like late 70s, early 80s, of course, educational science or just the education system just didn't understand what to do with kids like me. Um, and so people thought I was slow. And the other thing is, because I didn't speak English, I had only one friend, a guy named Michael Smith. And so I would follow Michael Smith like a orphaned puppy dog right after a rainstorm, looking for like like, and whereas Michael Smith was like the butcher's son, always like has some for whatever reason having raw meat in his pocket, right? This is a very tortured metaphor.
You're stretching it. Yep.
Yeah, I'm stretching it like that rubber band I mentioned earlier.
There you go.
And one day, it was third grade, 1983. I couldn't play with Michael Smith anymore in recess because he was taken out of recess and put into something called the computer club, right? 1983. And essentially, Michael Smith was one of the lucky kids whose parents had gotten him an Apple II Plus computer. Therefore, he was automatically brought into the computer club. But because I was a poor immigrant son, I had no computer. Therefore, I had no friends.
Mm.
But an orphan puppy dog is going to do what an orphan puppy dog does. And I still kind of followed him to the doorstep and kind of imagine like a classroom door. And they're like kids like whacking away at computers in the early 80s, like like a lot of people listening here weren't even born then, right? And then this like poor little like kid wearing garage sale clothes with like plaid pants and like a velvet vest. And I know I had a velvet vest because I had pictures. Um, looking on the window and like thankfully the teacher who was running the computer club, Mrs. Pam Irwin, may she rest in peace, because if she's still alive, she's very old. Um, she let me in. She's like, she put me in front of this thing that was a paper computer. And the paper computer was essentially how to learn assembly language without a computer. It mimicked like memory registers and like different things. And I knew enough English to try to work it out to prove it. And so like how this comes back to gaming is this. Once I got into that club, I learned how to copy video games. Right? On 5 1/4 inch discs. And I became like the center of pirated video games in my elementary school, just like trading discs. And that is how I became a member of a useful member of society. That is like, so I think with my origin story for games, it's just like distributing like games, and it was like old like Broderbund games, like Karateka and like Serpentine, and Choplifter. Those are the games that like, and Load Runner, if you remember Load Runner at all.
Oh yeah.
But like,
Oh yeah.
like yeah, and like yeah, back then the two camps were like the Apple people and then the Atari, like 520 ST people, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, because they had like Jumpman and Mule and all those games, which like, and I had something like in yeah. So thank you for allowing me to like share this like walk down ancient history lane. You
That's
know?
that's
Um,
so cool. I mean, wow. And I have similar stories of falling in love with the same machines and playing the same games in the computer lab above the industrial arts area in my little town school when we were kids, getting chased out by the IA and teacher. And yeah, oh, that's how kids like us fell in love with video games. It was a place to be. Yeah.
yeah. Is a place to belong, I think, is really one of those things, because the like back then the world wasn't so flat and frictionless. There was a lot of friction to find your people
Yeah.
and not feel scared to be honest with yourself. I'm and I know that that sort of language is for people who have much more defined needs and like identity than certainly a cisgendered Asian guy in video games, right? Like where I'm in my life, I'm be honest, I'm very entitled and lucky to be there because I'm in the right gender, in some ways the right race for those sorts of things. But back then,
Mm.
there were so many walls keeping people apart, and gaming, and just like heck, just having like a fistful of quarters, like, and to go to the arcade, and then just like I would just like to like go to the arcade and not have quarters, even, and like just cheer people on at the Street Fighter machine or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles machine, right? Like, or like I remember just like not having quarters and seeing like there were like two people whacking away at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing, and there's like one thing open. I would just whack next to them, even though I couldn't play. I wanted to feel like I belonged, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But
And like, yeah. So I think that's a wonderful thing about gaming, man.
Agreed. That's why we love it. That's why we love it. All right. Well, let's move back up to the closer to the future here. So you're eyeing up Riot. You're going to go to Riot. But you have no background in gaming, so you have to be strategic about it. How did you position yourself to stand out in that process? How did you get through that door?
I was very lucky for one thing, in that having been in advertising, I was good at trying to anticipate what people needed. Because in advertising, like I said, it's convincing people to buy things that they don't necessarily need. And that isn't just in the advertising campaigns, but that is also a fundamental part of the advertising infrastructure, meta strategy, what have you, which is you have to convince marketing directors and procurement agents, etc.,
Yep.
to better understand what they need. And you're in advertising and you know this full well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so I looked at this job description and then I said, well, this is what they think they need. But what is it they don't know they need? And how do I start building a story around that? Right? Because if I competed on what they wrote down, I would lose. I would absolutely lose. In a way, I had to redefine how they thought about what they needed and then understand how to bring that story about, right? Because they needed somebody, and they didn't know how to say it. They needed somebody to know more about the gaming industry than they did. They also needed somebody to be a great bridge between doing business in Vietnam versus doing business with the, quote, West. They needed somebody who was proactive and tenacious. None of these things were in a job description. Absolutely none of these things are in a job description. No, I'm not saying they needed somebody who was passionate about gaming. Right? Note, I didn't say anything about, wanting years of experience in the gaming industry. Because they already have all this information. They already know these things. But they needed somebody to bring something different, but still pass the sniff test to say, oh, this guy isn't a terrible idea at the same time. Right? Because and that whole leverage and thinking about how these job application processes are not about being qualified. It's not. These are not, oh, you need to pass the test. You don't need to get the gentleman's seat. These are beauty pageants. And I know how pejorative and how sexist it is, but look, in a test, you can feel good about being second best in a test. You can, right? But in a beauty pageant, and not having been in a beauty pageant yet, but I've been asked.
yeah.
No, I'm here. A boy likes to be asked, Gerald. A boy likes to be asked.
I'll remember that.
First runner-up probably doesn't feel that much from being a loser. And that is the same with applying for a job, right? And so you have to, and like literally you have to look the part, sound the part, sing for your dinner, do all of these things, not good enough, because good enough is not good enough. Better than, like, your worst day in the job hunting process has to be better than everybody else's best day for you to have a chance, right? Like that performative, competitive spirit is one that I took in because I was the underdog of underdogs, right? And like the thought is like, hey, if I have this one shot, not quite like Eminem and Amal, but it's a one shot. I'm in my head, I'm trying to figure like slipping mom spaghetti somewhere, but I'm not successful.
Good try.
And I'm going to leave it all on the field and do everything I can, because if I don't take this shot that is just out of nowhere, like I'm not going to go out and hunt for the next job opportunity because I lived in Vietnam. I remember my alternative plan was just to go to South Africa and just do something totally different.
Right.
And what a funny world that would be if I was suddenly like actually spent the last 10 years in South Africa doing things, right? And would my life be better or worse? I have no idea. It'd certainly be different. But But that was like the choice was very like an all or nothing kind of thing because imagine I am shedding my career. I'm like saying goodbye to my advertising company that I built over like I think at that point 5 years, maybe like 5+ years at that point. Um, and so there was a void or a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. So I do like fill that in with good old fashioned get to itness, elbow grease, gumption, insert folksy aphorism here. Um, and so what that looked like was breaking it down, the job hunting process into different parts and different kind of milestones in project management. Like my Deloitte consulting DNA comes out and saying, oh, project management milestones. But you can also think about it as different quests, right? Like, how do I recruit an ally to get me in the inside? All right. How do I get an interview? What happens? Like, well, how do I prepare for interviews? Um, how do I get remembered? How do I follow up, etc. And so I had this plan, right? And some of the things worked really well. I found the recruiter and I was very transparent with them and said, hey, I know you make a commission off of this. I won't make a commission off of this, but I'm gonna but I think that we can work together and I want to do my best. Help me help you make money and let's figure this out. I hired a graphic designer to help me make a nice resume that looked like Riot materials, but not be obnoxious. Because too many times people will do things like, I don't know, like have like clip art for like different characters and like it takes something that should be professional and looks a little bit like fan art. Which is a shame because something that'll just distract people. But like that was the line I was trying to toe. Um, And then I hired a PR agency to conduct hostile interview training for me because the most obvious and painful questions were like, hey, you have no gaming experience. What makes you think you can do the job? Those sorts of questions. And I just need to be hammered different ways because if you're preparing, you have to just assume that the day that the interviewer is interviewing you, it's like the day that their dog had food poisoning and their car broke down and um, I don't know, they burned their breakfast burrito in the microwave. Like it's just like a bad day.
Yeah, I get it.
It's like and so like if you can weather that where you're paying somebody to be absolutely verbally abusive to you, then everything becomes easier. Everything becomes easier because you've done like I have done the worst to myself, sir. Bring it on. Right? But then even then that's just like performative. Like there's nothing in my core that makes me different. Like maybe it helps me pass the sniff test because my resume looks more gaming friendly. I speak more in the right words and I have the confidence, but there's nothing deeper than that. And one thing you know about Riot or just people in the gaming industry is that if there's doubt, they will press you hard until that their doubt is either justified or assuaged. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I hired 2 research agencies to conduct research on Vietnam's gaming industry that doesn't exist anywhere else. Because who would spend money on doing research on Vietnam alone except for a crazy guy like me who was just like, hey, I'm going to do everything I can. That being said, I was also lucky because having come from being in advertising, I had favors to pull with these research agencies because I'd sent them some work and I got good prices for these things, but it wasn't cheap. And so that was kind of how I prepared. But as Mike Tyson says, no plan survives a punch to the face, right? Or thereabouts. Yeah. And so I learned that Riot is really bad at hiring people, right? And then when I say that, imagine I submit my resume to the recruiter. Recruiter says, great. They talk to Riot. The recruiter comes out, like, Riot really wants to meet with you. They want to interview you. I'm like, great. And they're like, when? And they're like, Riot's going to get back to you. 1 month later. Hey, it's been a month. Riot hasn't gotten back to me yet. Is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. They're just slow. Couple weeks pass. Then the interview finally happens. And then the recruiter, oh, they really like you. They can't wait to schedule another interview with you. Okay, when? Well, they'll get back to you. 1 month later. And imagine 1 month after 1 month, it would just be this thing where like after like the third or fourth time, I became like like Wesley and the Dread Pirate Roberts from The Princess Bride. And I don't know why. I like to drop all these kind of like folksy kind of things that anchor me in time. But it's just like like where like the like Dread Pirate Roberts always says to us, "Hey, good job. I'll probably kill you tomorrow, but have a good night."
Yeah.
I just felt like I was always walking the plank and I was already dead, and nobody was polite enough to tell me I was dead. But then lo and behold, they would bring me back in, and that was 13 rounds of
Hmm.
interviews, right? And in that there was like a 6 round day. They flew me into Los Angeles and I had interviews. But there is the preparation I did, and then there's the emotional resilience that I did not have because every step of the way after maybe month 3 or month 4, I stopped believing it would happen. I literally stopped believing it would happen because they they were just sandbagging every step of the way. And the stories I would imagine in my head were like, oh, they found somebody else. Oh, they just forgot about me. Oh, they just don't want to open an office in Vietnam. They're like, but a lot of it was just like, oh, I must have said something bad. Oh, I shouldn't have worn a green shirt. You idiot. They like red. You should wear red everything. And then like, I don't know if you've been there, but I think I've been there a lot with in important moments in my life where the answer has been slow or not following this expectation that I have invented in my head. Therefore, I blame myself, and oftentimes I end up just being crueler to myself than I would ever be cruel to anybody else. And like as a coach, like let me to get on a sandbox. This is the pandemic that is happening in our industry where we all tell ourselves stories about how the world should be, right? How because they're based on how we were raised and what we see in movies and what we read in books and the like not just like self-help or like career guidance books, but even like being fed on Dragonlance growing up or like all these sorts of things or like like the Campbellian like hero's journey kind of stuff. Like this is the way it's supposed to work, but when it doesn't, we say, well, I guess we suck because the world is everybody else is right. And that lack of self-compassion, that is like that takes so much away from us that it's so unfathomable. And the horrible part is that it is us hurting ourselves, right? Um, and I was at that point so many times applying for Riot, where I was just gonna like imagine every time they were slow, I was like, forget it. Just tell them I don't want to be part of this. You guys clearly don't respect me, right? Or like clearly you're just trying to be polite. You don't have to. You can put me out of my misery. It's okay. I just want to move on with my life and move to my like a little hut in South Africa and raise goats and do whatever cliched things that were going through in my head at that point because I was just really confused. And remember, just recovering from trauma and just trying to make magic happen with my life, but the magic wasn't happening very fast, and it made me very frustrated, angry, and sad.
Yeah.
Um, Somehow I persevered, or maybe I had enough momentum running into it that I kept running even though I didn't know why I was running anymore, and I was able to push through. And eventually I joined Riot Games.
Wow. That's a journey, dude. That's a journey. I'm curious, after when you were inside Riot, you're running all these huge events and doing all this work, did you ever get a chance to talk to some of the people involved in the hiring process and find out what it was like from the other side, find out like what it was that attracted you, what they liked?
So, a couple things. Hilarious. Um, So Riot and a lot of other gaming companies, they have a final boss interview called a sponsor or what have you, right?
Okay.
And my sponsor interview at that point was a man named and still named. I don't know why his past tense grammar is always confusing me, right? Like his name still is.
Yeah.
Still Nicolas Laurent, who like very soon after that became the CEO of Riot Games. Because sponsors were just there were not very many people who did that job. And in that interview, he asked me the hardest interview question I have ever encountered, and harder than any of the interview questions my clients have ever encountered, which is this, because I know that I've set this up and you're like leaning in and that's great. So you've had a lot of interviews, right? I'm like, yeah, 13 interviews. Like you like 12 interviews now. It's a lot. They're like, okay, and which interviews do you think really went well? And I'm like, oh, I think like these interviews really went well. And I chose in my head. Well, I'm going to say the question first. And I'll tell you how I dissected it.
Oh yeah.
And then, so he asked me which interviews went well and which interviews went poorly. And so in my head, I thought that I shouldn't, like, it's like when you play a card game like euchre, where you don't want to give up all the good cards. You want to hold, or Uno, right? You want to hold on to a couple like wild cards, et cetera, in your hand. So for the good interviews, I gave him a good interview and an average interview because I wasn't sure the question. And then because he'd asked me that, and then he's like, what were the bad interviews? And I gave him a good interview and a bad interview. And he's like, Chris, at Riot, we believe in feedback. So I don't want my interviewers to give bad interviews. So I want you to give them feedback on how they need to improve their interviews. And I'm going to record you and share it with them.
Oh wow.
Right? So imagine thinking in my head, I'm like, I cannot give weak ass feedback because he will fail me for being a weak ass.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I feel like fundamentally nobody wants to hire weak asses. But I also don't want to create enemies with the people who interviewed me because they can still blackball me at any moment saying, hey, you know what, this Chris guy, we were wrong, he's a jerk. Right?
Yeah.
All within moments. Right? Like you can imagine inside my brain bobbing around like Doctor Strange in Infinity War. Right? So I trying like out of like the 19 million ways I can answer this question to accept solar ways I can answer this and not die. Right? Or one. Right? Shit, I should have known one, but I didn't. And for that, I just leaned back on my training. And it was just like repeat the question, establish what a successful answer looks like, and do that, right? And I said, hey, it's really important. Like, I agree, it's really important to give good feedback because without good feedback, teams can't grow. That was my way of restating the question. Then I said, here's what good feedback looks like. And I explained to him a textbook definition of feedback because I was trained in practicing and like loaded up on all the podcasts that you could load up on, right? And it's the same feedback I give to my clients, the feedback process I give to my clients who are in management positions, which is state the behavior, state the outcome, state the impact of the, and then say if you want to repeat it or not, because the goal of feedback is to improve performance and it's nothing personal. And so I said, hey, this is what you did in the interview. This is what I perceived as the impact, and this impact isn't good for the process, so I think you should reconsider. Right? And I did that twice. And that was it, because it was less about me giving them feedback, about me demonstrating that I knew how to give feedback.
Right.
Right. And if they're I'm beaming a little bit because I rarely get to tell this story. But if there's any one answer that I think got me into Riot, it was that one. Right. That format. Because it was like a hard ass question, because like you have to imagine the guy was fumbling with his phone to get it to hit record. Right. Now, a couple months later, catching up with him because now I work for him.
Yeah.
I'm like, did you ever give that feedback? He's like, no, I didn't record it.
Damn it.
Right.
Oh, you did all that dancing and nobody got to see the show.
No, but no. The most important person saw the show.
That's true.
right?
That is true.
Like
Yeah.
like like that. But like in the moment, I had somehow deconstructed the meta rules of the game
Mm-hmm.
and just did it, right? Versus, could you imagine? It's like, yeah, I think Bradley really didn't do a good job of this, and he should have asked me that. That would have come off as petty and small and trying to like really make it about how I was disrespected, and
Yeah.
not really talking about really performance of the individuals involved and how it benefits the company. But that's like one thing is like, oh, reviewing the process was your original question. But I also talked to the hiring manager. In those 13 interviews, I did not get 13 yeses.
Hmm.
I had 2 nos. I had
That's not bad.
um that good. Right? But
You are hard on yourself.
no, and then you realize that like since then I've become a hiring manager and very few people get all yeses.
Yeah.
A lot of people beat themselves up because they didn't like weren't successful in every interview. I'm living proof that you don't have to. What happens is that if the hiring manager really likes you, they will go and try to renegotiate that no into a yes. Right? Like the phrase that will come about in that process is, how hard is your no?
Hmm.
How can we mitigate that? Right?
Yeah.
And then oftentimes it either becomes it's a hard no, or I think you should have them re-interview with this person, and if this person is a yes for them, then I become a yes.
Makes
And
sense.
and so that's why you have these kind of long drawn out processes, and the back end it becomes quite political because hiring managers don't want to try to push people through with no's because then it feels like they're really taking a big chance on somebody. And my hiring manager took a big chance on me. Remember, no gaming industry experience, just a freaking Yahoo coming out from the jungles of Vietnam and the mountains of Nepal, and like just kind of like climbing his way up. And I'm very grateful for that. But like having 2 no's, and basically what was held against me was that not that I didn't have gaming industry experience, it's because I had such a full career before, like
Right.
10 years as a consultant, right? Uh, After consulting, I went through another period of self-discovery. I was an English teacher. I worked at did marketing for a travel company. I like sold oil paintings on eBay for a short period of time, for Pete's sake, right? I thought about opening a vegetarian restaurant. I'm glad I did not. I'm not a vegetarian. I thought it was just good business. You know? Uh, and so like in telling that story, the general idea is like, wow, you seem to get bored often. Are you sure you're gonna be? And it wasn't anything about competency. It was more about culture and commitment
Right.
because I hadn't been committed to the industry before, and they didn't feel like there was a strong sense of commitment here. Um, and I'm not sure if and in full transparency, I'm honestly not sure if I brought in my Nepal experience to the interview process because I don't know if that would have made me a more likely candidate or less likely candidate. So
Right.
in retrospect, I don't think I did because I don't remember really practicing that kind of like what was happening there because it's very personal and doesn't necessarily make me seem the most professional of people.
Hmm. Interesting choice. Well, I mean, you've shared a lot of insight into the industry and wisdom. So that kind of brings us up to what you're doing these days. As you've mentioned, you're coaching people who are working to get into the industry or working in that space. I mean, kind of describe, sort of, we're starting to get closer to the end here, but for this piece, set the stage for me on what it is that you're doing these days. Like, walk me through what you're doing.
I had a great career at Riot. But there was a lot of pain and frustration and imposter syndrome, and sometimes just being in situations that I did not create for myself, but suddenly found myself accountable and um, being punished for. And then I also saw around me a lot of people that were just moving ahead in their careers and without achieving much, right? And the phrase falling upward came up a lot in my head. Whether or not it's justified or not, I'm still not sure, but I felt that there was a underlying sense of support for certain people through mentorship, and I'll call it for what it is, like sponsorship. Like there are certain people that had the stuff, the magic. And I was not one of those people. And so I left. I left Riot because I wasn't getting the opportunities that I wanted. And in retrospect, a lot of those reasons I wasn't getting the opportunity that I wanted because I was doing the wrong things. But nobody was telling me the right things to do, right? And a lot of it was I felt like Cinderella. I was in the kitchen doing all the chores while my stepsisters, wicked or not, were going to the ball. And I was like, gosh, wouldn't it be great if I had a fairy godmother? But no fairy godmother was forthcoming. So I left and I thought about like, oh, what I wish I had. And yeah, I wish I had a fairy godmother. So in a lot of ways, what I do now is I'm the fairy godmother to a lot of different people. And what's that mean? That means that I dispel people the preconceptions of how the world works that hold them back, right? Um, the I don't know, the self-fulfilling prophecies or the lies that keep you small, like, oh, my work speaks for itself. In this day and age, or if ever, your work does not speak for itself, right? I'm sure even Da Vinci had to go and promote his stuff on the road to get his patrons to pay attention. I'm not even going to pretend to know who his patrons are. Somebody in Florence, no doubt, right? Um, Now, and so, yet somehow we've been taught that that is noble. It is noble to be silent and wait our turn, and then when our turn doesn't come, it's our fault. It's our fault because we weren't good enough, and that just leads to despair and a really terrible form of self-loathing. But the honest God truth is, especially in this day and age, where social media is so prevalent and there's like very little friction to get distribution to get shared, the loud mediocrity are just like seizing the means of distribution now, right? Like not quite the Marxian means of production, but means of distribution have totally been seized. And so people who do really good stuff, but without any good distribution, get overlooked. And so the best stuff is the hidden stuff, which is a tragedy, not just for the artist, but for everyone else at the same time, right? Um, and like that mindset, we see it in so many different ways. Like if you build it, they will come, right? The whole Field of Dreams thing only works if you're Kevin Costner. And then maybe like give you a ranch in wherever Yellowstone is, right? I feel like I should know like Montana or something like that, right?
Yeah, you probably should. Yeah.
But I don't think I'll ever get confused for a cowboy. But be that as it may, we were raised on a diet of misinformation that weaponizes our highest virtues against us. And when we learn that that is not true, instead of saying it's not true, we turn our judgment inward and say we are bad people, we're inferior, we deserve less. And then you hit this stupid echo chamber that is LinkedIn, which is just there, which is either, oh my God, everybody in the world is celebrating their anniversaries at their company and getting jobs, etc. And it feels like everybody is in the homecoming dance party except for you, right?
Yeah.
Or it is the world's biggest pity party. And you just see the sky falling and everything's happening badly. So if everybody who's more talented, more experienced, and has better teeth than you is struggling, then what chance do you have with your braces, right? like as you can see, I had very awkward teenage years. But these things are not. These things, like these data points, can be accurate, but don't have to be the story you tell yourself about them, right? Because there's meaning in everything, but the meaning appears when we assign value to these data points, right? These algorithms are not our friends.
Mm.
They are not, right? But because we don't know anything better, and there's this weird predisposition, like if it's printed on a piece of paper, especially newspaper print, I will be more likely to believe it's true, even if it's the National Enquirer telling me about how Bat Boy is marrying Margot Robbie or something like that, right? And also the National Enquirer print edition is also something we've lost. We've lost something really wonderful in our lives. But that's for another podcast. But and we see something on like the digital screen or like from somebody who says that they're more successful than us. We believe it to be true and we believe ourselves to be inferior or less, therefore we do less, therefore our lives suck. And I know it's kind of ironic as somebody who is an influencer who has social media gravitas and weight, but that's the crusade I'm fighting, man. The whole idea that the only person who can tell you whether you're a winner or loser is you, decide, and then do the things, and the things that you need to do to get what you deserve are hard, but not difficult, right? It's like I always say, like running a Chinese restaurant is hard, but not difficult, right? Like it's just backbreaking work. You got to show up early in the morning. You got to brew your tea. You got to go do all that stuff and spend some time in Chinese restaurants, as you can imagine. But it's not like quantum physics. You know what I mean? It's a solved problem, right? But here, it's not difficult to understand. It's just that everybody's career becomes much more successful if they know what they're good at, they know who benefits from what they're good at, and they tell those people, hey, I'm really good at this thing ad nauseum until they get the things that they want.
Yeah.
And that's it. That is basically it. But the deprogramming from all these years of saying, hey, you need to be modest, like good children are seen but not heard, all of that stuff, right? And all this popular media where like all the quote obnoxious people are the virtue signalers out there, we forget that it's just entertainment. Like just because something's on TV, it's not a documentary, right? But like I don't know, that whatever part of our brain that makes really quick assumptions and quick judgments somehow says, oh, I see somebody acting in this way and they're a jerk. Therefore, if I act in that way, I am a jerk. However, what we saw was just a dramatic reenactment. Right? So why I do what I do and what I do, it's really helping people who are really good at their jobs get what they deserve, which is fair pay, stable income, and enough personal time so that they don't feel trapped by what they do.
Nice.
Right? And it's a shame that like it seems like such an egregious thing for people to want. Right? And it's not get rich quick. It is just get safe and stable slow, because slow is smooth. Smooth is fast, but you want to have a strong foundation on like your life and what's important. All right.
Yeah.
And here's where I kind of tie it up. You kind of want to make a foundation so strong is earthquake proof.
I like that.
Funny how it kind of like circles back. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It just like popped up in my head, but it's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Helping people make earthquake-proof careers. I like that. Write it down.
I might steal that.
It's yours. It's yours. Just for the...
You are the other guy, or the other earthquake guy, right? Come on.
You can have it for the low, low price of another interview later on.
Ah, dope. All right.
Well, we do have to start bringing this to a close. So I suppose I'd like to kind of find a piece of, I don't know, advice or information, something to bring this to a close. Working with people in the industry or trying to get into the industry, What would you say is the biggest misconception that they have in their heads, apart from what you've touched on already, or what is the biggest hurdle right now you're running into with people you're working with?
There are so many big hurdles, and I'm trying to distill something that is easy for people to digest.
Okay.
Right? I think so. Fundamental premise is that the more people you know, the more opportunities you have. And nobody knows enough people.
Mm.
So the the idea that comes about from this is meet more people, right?
Sorry.
So I tell all my guys to network and send connection requests to 10, 15 people a day to people you don't know.
Hmm.
Absolute strangers. And without a doubt, they're like, oh, I don't want to bother people. Right?
Yeah.
And the blocker here is, I don't think you're blocking, like, you're bothering people. And they're like, but I don't know them. I'm like, look, you're not on Facebook pretending to be their long lost cousin. This is LinkedIn, sir. It's like, sir, this is a Wendy's, right?
Yeah.
On LinkedIn, people are not there to have fun. It is not LinkedIn. It's not Facebook. It's not Instagram. Every social media platform, there's a purpose why people are there.
Yep.
On Instagram, it is to, I always feel, to either show off or to feel like you're not good enough. But that's definitely right.
Good way to put it.
People are on Twitter to argue. They say that they want to get the most news, etc., have conversations, but like arguing is and I hate the person I become on Twitter, and I apologize to anybody I've argued with and slighted, because it just is like when we say in from Warhammer 40K, don't invent the torment nexus. Like the torment nexus is Twitter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so on LinkedIn, people are on LinkedIn to transact business. People are there to talk business, to find out about new opportunities, to find vendors, to hire people, and to be hired, right? Those are all the main reasons. And if you are approaching somebody with a professional purpose, that is why they're on LinkedIn. You are not bothering people by helping them achieve what they want to achieve, right?
Yeah.
And so they are waiting for permission to say, hey, it's okay. But in their head, they're like, oh, I'm bothering somebody. And that mindset to flip somebody saying, no, you're helping them achieve what they want to achieve, because LinkedIn is just about business networking. That is the job,
Yeah.
right? And then I have to like put people through contortions like at GDC and Gamescom. Is this how you would behave? Oh, no, I would like when I talk to strangers and like make up small talk. I'm like, how is this different?
Mm.
And it feels more invasive. I'm like, it's more invasive than being physical to somebody.
Yeah.
And just like, it's very interesting how people have these stories in their head that they need pushing, either gentle or in a bit more enthusiastic pushing, to move them into the action that will change their life, which helps everyone and hurts no one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is one thing I think everybody should consider, and also the mental barriers that prevent people from just doing the things that they need to do.
I love it. That is some really, really, really good advice. I like it.
Appreciate your time and my stumbling around the English language.
You're rock. No, that was fantastic. I got a couple fun things I'd like to do before we start wrapping things up here. I have
Let's do it.
I have a philosophical question I ask everybody who comes on the show. If you've listened before, you probably heard it before, and it is your turn. So here's my question. And it's a little weird, so hang in there with me. In my opinion, there's a magical space at the intersection of obviously story and game, but improv, comic book writing, movies, film, advertising, all these things where creative people can just naturally get along. There's a connection, a fellowship. If you agree with my little theory, not everybody does, but if you do, what would you say is a magical thread that holds a space like that together?
I agree.
Oh, good.
And I'm trying to give you an interesting answer, because I worry that my answer is trite or been like trodden before.
Honest,
Right?
authentic. Hit me with it.
I mean, the obvious thing is story, all right? Because story is I think it's Lisa Cron who wrote Story Genius. She says that we evolved story to teach lessons, right? But we also say that, oh, tools are what define, Homo sapiens from other animals, except, otters use tools and crows use tools.
Pros, yeah.
But stories, right? And story are the thing that really tell us the most about each other, about how to live our lives, about what values we share, to spread joy, to spread sorrow, right? And all of those things are anchored in story, right? Like my best times in playing video games weren't about what I was doing in the game. It was about the tribulations of getting the right people together to play the game, or the post match come down where I'm like telling and for me it's for me it's always gonna be Warcraft 2 talking about my ogre mages and my death knights. All right. It's just going at it, right? And then sometimes clicking on a peon just too much until its head explodes. But no, those are sheep. Sheep explode, peons get angry with you.
Angry.
But it's the stories, man, right? And I say that because how it dovetails with what I do is that when people ask you an interview question, if you can structure it as a story, that makes people trust you a gazillion times more than just saying, hey, this is the answer, right? People aren't interviewing just because they want to know if you can do the thing. They're interviewing you because they want to know, do I like this person? Do I trust this person?
Oh.
And stories are the best way to convey that.
Amen.
So, yeah. Sorry for the trite answer.
No, that's a fantastic answer. That is an excellent answer. Stories and games are two of the things that make humans humans. That's two things that make us who we are. So you nailed her. Love it. Okay, well, we're gonna start heading for the door here, my friend. I like to signal boost. I like to leave a little space. Is there anything you're working on or worked on you want to share, or where can people find you online if they want to, enlist your aid, or where can we follow you online?
I'm obnoxious on LinkedIn, so
I don't know if I
Chris on LinkedIn. But I think a lot of the more useful things, I invest a lot of time and resource into my YouTube channel, which is nascent. It's Chris Tran Coach. So it's a lot of just going deeper on some of the things I've touched upon here, and giving people a lot of the advice that nobody really wants to talk about. And I'll tell you why. Because if you speak the harsh truths, it makes you unemployable in the gaming industry, right? So imagine you have to be a little bit of a pariah to do what I do.
Gotcha.
And I've climbed that mountain, been very happy to do it, and I'm happy to just be the hermit on the mountainside, to just not be part of society, but give people advice to be able to do that. And YouTube is a great place for me to say some of the sharper things that can transform change.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that would be wonderful for people to check that out. And then they can always just blow me up on socials and if they have direct questions.
Cool. Well, I will throw the links to all that down in the show notes, comments, wherever that stuff goes. That's it, my friend. I'm gonna start shoving you towards the door.
I am being shoved.
Wow, that was so believable. Before I push you out the door,
we're gonna fix it.
Fix it in post. Do you have any parting words of wisdom? I would love to give you the last word of the show. And this is it could be life advice, career advice, craft advice. It could be a recipe. Last word is yours, my friend.
So here's a really stupid piece of advice I've been noodling on for interviews, right? People don't know. I was late for this for a couple of minutes because I was putting makeup on, right? And I put makeup on for this, for you. Not just you, Gerald, but for the people who I'm lucky enough to join us here, because I wanted to look my best, right? And society has taught us that men are not supposed to wear makeup. My makeup is really just a base powder to keep me from looking sweaty and to glisten less. But just doing that much gives me a lot more confidence because I'm just like, it's the same thing as like dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So not saying that every guy who interviews or everybody who interviews should put makeup on before a video call, but these small things make you more confident and not be embarrassed by just thinking outside the box, right? And so with this gift of a last bit of soapboxy, yeah, why not makeup for guys for interviews? Why not?
And that wraps up another episode of The Corner of Story and Game. Chris, thank you for sharing your journey from the ad world to the esports arena and for reminding us that the path into games doesn't have to be linear to be meaningful. And to you, dear listener, as always, thank you for taking your seat at the table. If this episode lit a spark, share it with somebody else who's trying to find their place in the industry. The door's not necessarily closed. They just need someone to show them where the handle is. Until next time, keep playing games, telling stories, and creating worlds worth getting lost in. Stay safe out there, Wanderer. Your chair will be ready by the fire the next time you stop in at the Corner of Story and Game.